The next reader, I am very excited to have her on stage. We are part of the Rookie League at Theater Sports. Catch us on Sunday nights improvising sometimes. She is a part of the group The Fictionals. She's a stand-up comedian as well. And this is my Say Wha. You guys probably don't know. I'm going to mention it. I wrote it in your bio. Our next performer is the director and manager of a funeral home. Say Wha! Please give a very loving welcome to Jennifer Perrin.
Yeah, you gotta lower it from that guy. Because I was the short one that had to. Big round of applause for Sara. Thank you for that lovely welcome. Well, this is my first time doing Say Wha, and I'm really and I'm excited to be here. The book I chose was for 3 different reasons. One was the title, the second reason was the cover, and the third reason was the reviews. So the cover is this. It's Baby Bonanza. We have a very strong, it's an ebook just like Sara. So we have, Say Wha? We got a very strong man who's referred to throughout the book as a brunette, but he's blonde, and holding 2 babies like footballs. And if you look closely later, because you'll want to, one of the baby's legs is as big as his head. And you know, the babies are only talked about in the first 80% of the book, and they're only in the last 20%, and there's only 2 babies. This does not make a bonanza, okay? Like, I'm sorry, that's not the definition of bonanza. But the reviews that really made me laugh were, Jade wrote, "The cover was so ridiculous, I had to read it." Verdict, the cover was the best thing about the book. Kim said, "This was the first romance I ever read where the hero was too stupid to live." First one. And Derek said, "Perhaps I wouldn't have been so critical if it was set in the Victorian times. As if it would have some funny corset factors to it, I would have forgiven its sins. But being that it's set in the modern world just highlights the worst aspects of this novel." He wants a book in the Victorian times, and it makes it okay to be a baby bonanza. Yes, okay, I know it's just a silly romance, but then there's silly, and then there's bad, and then there's this book. So the premise is sassy single mother Jenna Baker. She gets a job on a cruise ship and meets the boss, Nick Falco. They have a 1-week affair, and he finds out she works for him, so he fires her on the spot. And then she goes away to have 2 of his babies, and then she emails him and writes him. He won't respond, and instead of getting a lawyer, she buys a ticket to go on one of his cruise ships. And so, yeah. And the book starts off, and I'm telling you, the first entire 4 chapters touch on the cabin size of her where she's staying. And it starts off with the very first line in the novel. "Ow!" Jenna Baker hopped on her right foot and clenched at the bruised toes on her left, shooting a furious glare at the bolted down table in her so tiny that claustrophobics would die cabin. She called down silent curses on the head of the man who was the reason for this cruise from hell. 6 pages later, still describing the cabin. It was the bathroom. It was the size of an airplane bathroom. Only it contained a shower stall designed to fit pygmies. In fact, the opening of the sliding door was so slender, Jenna had to slap one arm across her breast when leaving the shower, half afraid she'd scrape her nipples off. I don't usually slap my nipples when I'm protecting them, but whatever. It comes off like a complaint letter to a cruise ship line that she took a black cruise or something. And the sporadic writing was really hard to stand sometimes. She missed him, dreamed of him, and now that she was here now that he was here touching her, was she really going to turn him down, walk away, go to her solitary bed, pray of him, dream of him? No. Was she going to regret this? Maybe, eventually. Was she going to do it? Hell yeah. She introduces the swarmy playboy by saying his image rose up in her mind. And just for a second, Jenna enjoyed the nearly instant wash of heat that whipped through her. But the heat was gone in a moment, to be replaced by a cold fury. Better all around if she concentrated on that particular emotion. After all, unlike every other passenger aboard Falcon's Pride, she hadn't come aboard the floating orgy to party. And, seriously, it's a floating orgy. So you'll notice that I emphasize the words heat, and it's because in this novel, that is her synonym for vagina, penis, nipples, sex, horny, anything. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea, she whispered, her insides fisted other parts of her heated body, just on the strength of the memories alone, yes. His arms tightened until she could hardly draw breath. But who needed air, Jenna groaned, moved into him, pressing along him, felt him jutting against her. That was enough to send even more spirals of heat dancing through her bloodstream. I need it too, he told her, lifting her head, looking down into her eyes as he slid one hand down the length of her body, fingertips lightly dusting across her skin. He reached the elastic band of her panties and dipped his hand beneath to cup her heat. He used one hand to tease and tweak her nipples while the other explores her damp heat. His fingers dipped lower, smoothing across her most tender, sensitive flesh with a fiery caress that only fed the flames, threatening to devour her. She did what he asked, fighting to keep her eyes open and focused on the shimmering sea as he dipped one finger and then another into her heat. Paragraph. I did what Sarah do, and I searched how many times heat was used in the novel. 185 times. I bet at least 3 women in this audience can come up with a version of heat better for their vagina. Even Oprah calls it a vajayjay. I mean, come on. Okay. So another thing about this novel is it had really, really, really bad cliffhangers. At the end of chapter 5, she walks in to find out the paternity test, to find a redhead on his bed. Jenna's gaze was locked to his bed. Her brain short-circuited as she blankly stared at the very surprised, very naked redhead stretched out on Nick's bed, when just the night before they had sex. Just kidding. It was a whore there to have sex with your man. But he didn't know. And that's at the very next to the next chapter. I know, right? And then chapter 8 ends with him. She runs away from the cruise ship because he didn't have sex with the redhead who was on his bed that he didn't know that was there. So he follows her to her house and he says, it occurred to me that twins were a lot of work for one parent. What are you getting at? Why was he suddenly shifting the gaze from hers, avoiding her, looking at her directly? So my plan's simple, he said, interrupting her before she could really get going. We split them up, and each one of us take one of the twins. She says, what? Are you insane? You can't split them up. They're puppies. Or they're not puppies. You can't pick them from the litter. And then, end of chapter. At the beginning of the chapter, just kidding. He wants to stay there and spend the day with her. She says, no, you have to leave. And he says, I'll take you to court. I'll get custody of those kids. Would you really? In a heartbeat. You're really a callous jerk, aren't you? I am whatever it takes to get the job done, Nick told her. Congratulations. Then you win this round. There's nothing like saying I love you by using babies as bargaining chips. So the end of this story, he changes some poopy diapers. She thinks it's really cool. He takes a nap with the kids. He buys her a house. They fall in love. Sorry to ruin the ending. I know. And I tried to think of something witty to say, but really, just the ending itself is perfect. Nick laughed loud and long and felt thousands of pounds of dread and worry slide from his shoulders.
You'll marry me?
I will.
And we'll have more babies?
Yes, she smiled up at him, and her eyes shone with happiness, so rich, so full, it stole Nick's breath. 12 if you want.
And sail the world with me?
He said, dipping his head into the calm heat of her neck. Always, she said, still smiling, shining with an inner light that warmed Nick through. I love you, Nick. I always have. We'll be happy here in this wonderful house.
We will,
he assured her, stealing another kiss.
but you're gonna have to be house training those puppies.
Babies, yeah.
For you, my love,
Nick whispered, feeling his heart become whole for the first time.
Anything.
Yeah, it was the end. He was the Grinch.